Hi, this is Dan Matson. Please note this podcast was created several years ago. Some of the links, email addresses, phone numbers, and promos are outdated and no longer valid. Thanks and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 119. I am your host, Dan Matson, a.k.a. Wooden Boat Dan. If you can't do it, well, he's going to look for a new tagline this year then. And this is the world's first podcast. Yeah, that's right, the very first in the world that's fully, completely, 110% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels around the globe. Thanks for joining me today, folks. Great to have you on board the SS Hooked on Wooden Boats ship. This is where we talk about all things wooden boat. We like to have fun with it. Like to encourage others to get in the wooden boat game. So hang on to your seatbelts because here we go. Today's featured segment is an interview with Gayle Brantuk. Gayle is the proprietor of Glen-L Marine in Bellflower, California. And the company was started by her father, Glen-L, who is still involved in the company a little bit at the age of 95. It's a really fascinating interview about the history of this company that's been providing boat plans and kits and information to amateur boat builders since the mid-1950s in the United States. Well, they're located in the U.S., but they send stuff all over the world. So you're going to want to hear the interview. It's really a lot of fun. Gayle's a really fun person to talk to. And so stick around for that. I'll be showing up here in a couple minutes. Well, I wish I could say there was a lot of really exciting things happening here at Hooked on Wooden Boats and in the wooden boat world this week. But frankly, this time of year it gets a little bit boring unless I'm working on my own project. And if you've been listening, you know that I bought a Scamp partially assembled a couple of weeks ago, which I'm going to be working on. But I decided in the meantime to get my shop organized before I dig into that. The shop I have is in my 3-car garage, which we've been living at this home since last March. So when we moved here, I kind of got my shop set up the way I thought I wanted it, and I used it for the last 10 months. But now I know where the weak spots are. And so I'm going through and I'm being pretty meticulous about getting things organized and moved around. I know what I use the most and what I use the least now, and so I'm putting the least used things in locations that aren't as convenient to get to, putting the stuff I use more in other locations, just doing little things like cleaning up cords that are hanging around that I'm just an extension cord that's been in the way of part of my workbench for quite a while. That's really annoying. It took me like 3 minutes to drill an 1.5-inch hole through the shelf so I could put the plug up through the hole and it would get out of the way. It would be out of the way of my workbench. I'm getting everything off the top of my workbench. I don't like stuff on my workbench, but I've been accumulating things there. So I put a little bit bigger shelf above my workbench and just doing things like that. I'm also putting in a portable heater in my shop. And my shop is about 450 square feet. And so I ordered on Amazon a Dimplex portable construction heater. It's an electric forced air heater. Portable, it's 4,800 watts, 240 volts. So I've wired in a new receptacle for that, and it's supposed to be here this week, and hopefully that will heat my shop very well and won't cost a fortune. So I will keep you posted on that heater because I'm curious how good a job it'll do. If it does a great job, I'll probably put a link on the podcast so you could check it out if you want to. That would be pretty fun. So that's what I've been working on in my spare time. And my garage has been really cold to work in. It's been in the mid to high 40s. So that's why I'm looking forward to getting that heater so I can get it up to 55 or 60, maybe even 65, and be a lot more comfortable working out there. We have lots of new subscribers to the electronic newsletter the monthly newsletter that I send out for free to subscribers. So I'll give a shout out to these folks: Ralph Hone, Chris Gooch, Ben Hoptley, Stephen Myers, Kevin Aerosmith, Peter Ducuto, Stephen Midas, Selby John Starkey, and Paul Tennis. Welcome to the newsletter, guys. And for those of you listening that would like to receive a free monthly newsletter with fun information and resources and updates on what's happening at Hooked on Wooden Boats, links to videos and things like that, all you have to do is go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe and give me your first, last name, and email address, and you'll be on the list. So I would encourage you to do that. As far as upcoming wooden boat events that I'm planning on going to, there's really nothing happening until probably May. Although I've been watching the Port Townsend Pocket Yachters, who started off this year with a row and sail to Rat Island near Port Townsend, and I wish I lived closer to Port Townsend because I would have been there. Looks like they had a lot of fun. It was a pretty nice day. It was cold, but clear skies and calm seas. So I'm a little jealous those guys are having so much fun over in PT, but one of these days I'll get over there and go out with them, so that'll be pretty fun. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview with Gayle Brantuk from Glen-L Marine. Take it away, Gayle. It is December 20th, 2013. I'm on the phone with Gayle Brantuk from Glen-L Marine. Gayle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on board here. And you currently basically run the Glen-L Marine business, which your dad started years ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So maybe, Gayle, what we could start with, I think it'd be fascinating to hear kind of a pretty complete history of Glen-L Marine, because it's been around a long time and been very successful.
Yes, we've been around for 60 years this year, and my father, Glenn, started the business back in 1953. And as far as the timeline as to how it all came about, I'll kind of give that, because the memories from that era are a little bit sketchy sometimes in terms of what happened first, but the whole idea for Glen-L came about because my dad liked to build boats. He liked boats, rather, I should say that. He liked boats. It was the Depression era, and he and his brother couldn't afford to purchase one, so, they were handy. Back then you did things yourself, and they liked to piddle around with building boats. And which they did. They built a couple together. But what my dad discovered was that there were no plans for, just the regular guy who wants to build his own boat. They were more geared toward professional builders, people who knew how to build a boat. So he just recognized that was kind of a need, or at least an untapped market at that point. And just through different, he spent some time in, World War II. He was in the Army Air Corp, and during that time he had some drafting skills, and so they put him to work doing he designed the airfields in Okinawa and some other things like that. And so, he didn't have a whole lot to do with while he was there, and so he did the correspondence course through Westlawn Naval Design, which is, pretty much at that point, that was the only design school that was around for naval architects. And so he went through that correspondence course and basically learned how to build a boat, or how to design boats. And he was kind of, I remember him mentioning things. Gerald Taylor White was the president of the company at that time, and my father would design a boat, for the course, and then Gerald Taylor White would return his comments about it and what he thought. And at that time, plywood wasn't a common material for boat building, so my dad was trying to develop boats for that material because he felt it was stronger. It was a lot better for the first-time boat builder to build a boat out of plywood, and it was a novel thing at the time. So I think that there were some sometimes that Gerald Taylor White didn't think that my dad had all his screws together with what he was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he just, he just, my father is one of those people who he just does, he's very consistent. He continues to work and pursue his ideas, and he just continued to design and finish that course. And then it's kind of a long, convoluted story, but he worked at a foundry for quite a few years, became supervisor over that, and learned all about making patterns for parts and things like that. And back then, he used to make parts for his boats and his brother's boats and their friends and stuff like that. So initially, my brother and my uncle Albert, they started Glen-L Marine, which is still in existence in Gardena, California, and they make underwater hardware for all the inboard boats and things like that. So they started that business together, and then at some point, Dad decided to go off on his own, let Albert take that company, and he started Glen-L and started actually designing the boats specifically for the backyard boat builder. And in the beginning, he did a lot of different things. He had got some contracts through some local dealers to build boats for them. They built, a couple hundred of a small design that we have, just kind of finished the hulls, and my dad would deliver them to the people, and then they would finish them off. And, they did stuff like that. He early on hired a guy to build for him in the shop. And he had initially, once the company started going, we had frame kits, for our boats. And Don Rufo was the guy in the shop that would build those. And it was kind of like a separate little business of Glen-L. It was called Frame Kits Incorporated. And so Don would build all of our kits for us. So it's just, it just kind of started. He started adding design after design each year. Then he put out his first catalog that probably had, 15 designs in it or something. And it just kind of went on from there. Like I said, we've always been mail order, and so the way that everything was done through the mail. He would advertise in the various boating magazines, as well as Popular Mechanics and Popular Science, and people would see, write in and send 50 cents for a catalog, and then Dad would send them a catalog, and they'd pick out a set of plans, and it kind of went like that. And then he also had a dealer network that he set up, and that was a really good start to the business too. He had dealers that say they had a boat parts shop or something, they sold motors or something related to boats, and they would Dad would provide a display for catalogs of the designs, and then they would sell them, make a little bit of profit, and then in addition they would get to supply the builder with all the stuff that he needed too. So that was kind of the start of Glen-L, and then he started eventually writing books about the subject, and hiring people. He had a couple of other designers throughout the year that have helped him. Ken Hankinson was here for about 22 years. But they just, kept plugging away and putting out design after design throughout the years and adding to the catalog. And at some point, we, after the frame kits, then there was the fastening kits that we did, and then eventually we got our own, developed our own fiber epoxy. Well, it actually started with polyester, and then after the polyester there was epoxy, and so it's just kind of developed like that throughout the years to where now we have 300 different boats ranging from 6 foot up to 55 foot. For primarily for plywood. We've got plywood, fiberglass, steel, and aluminum designs, and then we've got we sell all kinds of stuff. Pretty much most of what you need to build a boat, except for the wood. We don't sell wood. But we have lots of books and DVDs that have been produced over the years, and all kinds of goodies. And we're adding new things to our website all the time, too. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. Wow. You covered 60 years pretty quick, Gayle.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. But let me ask some questions here. I'm curious what some of the earliest boat designs were.
Well, let's see. Some of the probably one of the very first would have been like the utility, which is it might have been an earlier iteration of it. It was just the one my dad built and sold a bunch of the the shells to somebody, and that would probably have been one of the earlier ones.
Was that like a little plywood skiff or something, or what was that?
It's an open utility boat, kind of like a little, very small runabout, and it's kind of got an open. I think it has a little bit of a deck at the bow, but it's just an open little, utility boat.
Meant for an outboard motor kind of thing,
yeah.
or?
Right, meant for an outboard.
Yeah, I see.
And then, golly, let's see, what would have been? I know the Zip was in there early, which is a little runabout that we have that's very popular right now.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly, started way back then. And
really? And that's you still use that design, and people are building it?
Oh, yeah. The amazing thing is that I think that some of our most popular designs would be our oldest.
Really? Interesting.
Well, because I think that, people have a nostalgia about them. They're interested in, what they saw when they were younger, things like that. So,
yeah.
The Zip was one. I pulled out an old catalog. I think this was copyright 1957.
Mm-hmm.
The Zip was in there. The Flying Saucer, which is kind of like the Zip, but it's a little bit smaller. That's 12 foot. The Zip is 14. And then we had some other, a couple of finned designs, like the old Cadillacs used to have the tail.
Oh, really?
So he had a couple of those, the Eldorado.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and those are still in our online catalog. Those are really cool looking boats.
Really fun.
And and then some cruisers. And let's see, how big did we go up to this time? Let's see, we have up to about 21 foot. It looks like. So I think they're all by size.
So what material? Those boats were built out of plywood over frames, and how were they? Were they screwed and glued to the frames? Is that how they were built?
Correct. Yeah, all of these would have been. All of them were plywood at that time.
Yeah.
And on over frames.
Okay.
And the frames are all made out of hardwood, generally mahogany. We used to always use dark red Philippine mahogany. And then the plywood, would be attached to the longitudinals, like the longitudinal battens, or the chine and the shear, and
those were notched into the frames. Is that right?
They're not frames, right? For most of them, some of them might be floating, but it just depends on the design. But we generally don't fasten into the frames.
Yeah. And so, were people in the 50s? Was marine plywood available then, or exterior grade plywood, or what were people using? Do you know?
That's a good question, Dan. I don't know. I don't know if they had marine grade or not. Probably a lot of people used whatever they had.
Whatever was a local lumber yard, probably, huh?
But I can tell you this. My dad has mentioned to me before that a lot of the designs, he would build them to fit a sheet of plywood. And back then, you could get 16-foot sheets of plywood. So that's something that we don't see so much anymore.
Really? 16
yeah,
foot? Oh, my goodness.
So in our original designs, a lot of them will list, 4 by 16. You need so many of these. And we've since changed that or put a note that says, we never use long sheets. You can butt join them all and or scarf join them. So, but yeah, he has mentioned to me several times that's why that boat's that length, because you could fit it on a sheet of plywood. So
wow, interesting. So those were 4 by 16 foot sheets.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, that's amazing. Now, you mentioned that the company sold frame kits. So would that basically be all the frames that you needed for the boat, and then you supplied the plywood and put it together? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, what they were, they would just that. They would be all the structural members of the boat, basically. It was the frame kits, which would be fully assembled, because our frames are all in several sections. Usually, the side members are separate, and then they're joined to the bottom member with gussets on the corners. And so those would be all assembled, and then you'd also get the stem, and usually the breast hook, and maybe sometimes the transom knees, just depending on the design. And those would be all knocked down flat. They wouldn't obviously be set up. They would be shipped in a box or a crate, and then the builder would get them with the plans, and then he would get his plywood locally, build his building jig in which to set up all the frames, and then set the frames up on that as per the plans, and then go from there.
Wow, that is cool. I like that. Do you guys still do that, Gayle?
We do not. We discontinued our frame kits probably. Yeah. Our frame kit builder, Alan, was with us for over 30 years, and he retired. He actually just needed to get out of California so he could retire. And so when he left I think it's been about 7 years ago, we decided at that point that, to retrain somebody to do the frame kits, it would have been a lot at that point. And people just weren't purchasing them anymore. I mean, it wasn't a huge, income for the company. So we decided to discontinue that part. The majority of our builders are true do-it-yourselfers, and the frames we provide the full-size patterns for all the frames.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So it's. And I know, once you discontinue something like the frame kits, naturally everybody wants one. But I'll tell you, the shipping on some of the larger ones it just ended up getting quite expensive. I've got a couple of kits left for a boat called the Dragonfly. It's a Garvey hull. I think it's about 15 feet. And it's been in our store forever because the shipping on that shipping alone is about $350 to $400.
Wow.
Because it has truck freight. So, guys would hear that that's what the shipping was going to be, and it's like, I could probably build that myself. And it's like, yeah, you sure can, because you got the patterns,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's not rocket science, so.
So were the first, you mentioned, was the company building boats and selling plans initially, Gayle?
Well, at the very beginning, my dad had to make some money, so he would kind of he and Don, the guy who worked in the shop, they would pretty much do whatever they needed to, to make their nut, and to keep Don busy in the shop. So, like I said, they did do a bunch of those boats. I remember him telling me about that, and I think my dad did some custom design work for some boat builders in our area, and he also did some custom lettering for people, like metal, how you'd see the metal Chris Craft. He would do that for some of the other builders. He did things like that as well. So in the beginning, on the side, you kind of do what you need to do to.
But that kind of went by the wayside, and it became pretty much plans and frame kits in it after a while,
right? Exactly. Yeah. The plant just kind of took over and, became a profitable business. And then, like I said, he started adding other things. And then we've always sold Glenwood parts too. So that's always been a part of our business as well.
Mm-hmm. I see. So Gayle, did you do much boating as a family when you were a kid with your dad and your brother and sister?
Well, interestingly enough, Dan, we didn't. When I came around in 1960, my dad was pretty much done with boating. His boating times were pretty much when he was younger. They would ski. They would, try to go fast in the marina here in Long Beach, Marine Stadium. That was kind of the place to go and hang out. And I know he talked over the years about. It was a lot of fun, but after a while, everybody would come and want to play on the boats, and then they'd leave, and he'd have to pay for all the gas and clean up at the end of the day. So it got kind of old after a while, but and he got, I know he got busy with with the business and designing and everything. And then when I was probably 4 years old, he built a cabin up here in California, but in Ventura County, up about an hour away. And it was a cabin that he built on a lake, and we had one of our designs is called the Sissy Doo, which is a little 13-foot outboard or rowboat, and we had that at our cabin for, as long as I can remember. And that was pretty much what I used as a kid, and we'd have sometimes another canoe or maybe a sailboat, whatever test models my dad had built at the shop. They'd usually end up at the cabin, and we'd use them there. But and then when I was like 15, I think we were on vacation, and my dad taught me how to water ski. That was the first time I'd ever water skied. And then when I was in, elementary school, elementary school through high school. When I got into high school, I was in Girl Scouts all those years, for about 11 years, I think. And I was in a Mariner troop, and so we spent a whole summer on the water where we did all kinds of, we learned to sail at the Boy Scout Sailing Club that was right in Marine Stadium in Long Beach. And so we did that one summer and had races and things like that. So I did a lot of sailing. I really enjoy sailing. I think that's probably one of for me, just sailing solo, I find very relaxing and enjoyable. But I also really love the fast boats too. So,
yeah.
But no, I've not spent a whole lot of time boating. It's not been a huge part of my life.
Yeah,
the business is more a huge part of my life than that. So.
And you mentioned earlier, Gayle, you're at the same location that you've been since the business started. Is that right?
Yes. Initially, my dad started in a little shop off of his home, kind of adjacent to or near his home. And then in, I think it's 53 that he moved us here. And he actually had a home built and also built the building that we're in right now. We have an office, and then we have a shop in the back, way back, and then the very back of the property there's a large warehouse. So yeah, he built that at some point, and that's where we still are.
Yeah, and where is that? Where are you located, Gayle?
We're in Bellflower, California, which is in the Los Angeles County, Southern California.
I see. Very cool. So I read somewhere about stress skin boat building, I think on your website. Do you know what that is, by any chance?
Well, that would just be, how our boats are designed for stress skin sheet plywood. I mean, the panels are somewhat under stress in terms of having to be, pulled in and conform to the shape of the frames, but they're all designed. It's called a cylindrical design development, so that they are actually the designs can be sheathed with plywood.
I see.
Now, not all of them. We have a lot of designs which actually are our most popular, which are cold molded, and those are boats that have a convex curvature at the forward section. So in other words, they're going to flare out at the bow, or they go in both directions, and plywood won't conform to that. And so those designs have to be cold molded, and it's basically you're building plywood in place. So you're laying strips of wood at an angle. So maybe the first layer might be at a 45-degree angle, and then the next one will be at 45 degrees of that. And usually it's usually about 3 layers, and then maybe a final layer will be the final mahogany layer, like a veneer that would be put on in horizontal strips to give it that classic look. So it's a lot better than how boats used to be built that would leak, and with batten seam construction, and now they're just very solid hulls, and they don't leak, and they're beautiful. So
I didn't realize you had some cold molded designs.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of, all the mahogany runabouts that we have are like that, and then there's some others that are Some of our boats are cold molded just in the forward section because that's where they're have that convex curvature. So, yep, quite a few.
So I'm just curious, Gayle, did your dad, throughout his whole design career, do it all by hand on a drafting table?
Yes, he did.
Really?
Every bit of it. Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
In the latter years, my dad has used. There was a guy local to us. His name was Ray Clark, and he had a little design program that he wanted my dad to test and see if it was any good. And so my dad did a couple designs using that. And it was helpful, but he had to fight with it because my dad, I probably when Ray started with us, I don't know, my dad was probably maybe in his 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So, using computers just wasn't quite, something he was very, very good at, basically.
Right.
Much better doing the calculations and things like that. But he did find it useful, I know, in some respects. And we still don't even know what happened to Ray. He just we've tried to call him, and he kind of disappeared.
Really?
Yeah, he was not doing well. I think he had a heart condition, so I'm not sure what happened to him. So if anybody out there knows, let me know.
Ray Clark, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he did use a couple of them, but he would just use the program to get some lines. He basically, that's all he would use it for. He didn't actually generate the design from the computer. He would then hand draw it out because that's what he knows.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, was your dad super passionate about designing boats, Gayle? Did he love to do it? Or, I'm just curious.
Well, my dad is an interesting person. He's when you say was he passionate, my dad enjoyed designing boats. I mean, he's done that from the get-go. He's always seemed to enjoy it. But he's a very humble, he's a very moderate man he's not a laugh out loud guy. He's very serious minded. And so and he doesn't you wouldn't know if he was like, he doesn't get real mad, he doesn't get real excited. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay. Just a real even-tempered guy. And
very even-tempered.
Yeah.
Just so when you say is it passionate, like my dad doesn't get all excited about anything. But he like I said, I find it amazing because, I don't know how you are, but maybe because I'm a female, but I have my ups and downs, and some days where it's like, oh man, I don't feel like doing this or that or whatever. But I don't think my dad thinks like that. I think he just here's what we do, and this is what I have to do, and he just would start a project and complete it, because it would take them, depending on the design, it would take months, to put one together and then draw out all the patterns, and it was a lot of work. It would take, and then once you designed the boat and fully lofted it for all the patterns, and then there was the proofing process where, back when Ken worked here, my dad and Ken would kind of work on projects together, and they would check each other's work, and then there would be the proofing of all the instructions, and my dad developed over the years a lot of systems for checklists. We would have printed pages that the designers would fill in all the various calculations that they did, and they kind of had a chart, and that's what they had to fill in, these certain characteristics, etc. And then checklists as to, now what do? We have to do the pattern or in the instructions. We have to do the catalog copy that's going to be show how we're going to sell the plan, and then later on the website copy and everything like that. Just a lot of little details, and then the kits. Here's what we're going to have for this boat. We'll have a fastening kit. Here's what's in it. Fiberglass kit. And here's what's in that. And so there's just a lot of little pieces in churning out a new design. So my dad he would just take the bull by the horns and just do everything that he did.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many plans they would do when Ken was here. I don't really remember. But I know just my dad alone, I don't know, maybe he'd do 5 designs a year. 5 or 6, something like that. So, but I know when it was both of them, I think Ken was a pretty fast designer too.
Yeah. Wow.
But after Ken Hankinson retired, I don't know if you didn't ask me this, but I'll just ramble on here.
No, that's good. Good information.
Ken was here. He retired just before I started, so it would have been in the mid-'80s, I believe. And he'd been here for 22 years. And my dad, Ken, came from a background of having worked for a professional boat builder, and he was designing things that, were, very detailed, but less detailed than the amateur backyard boat builder would need. So he learned from my father how to design a boat and just explain it, provide instructions. I mean, the boats that he used to design, you don't get instructions with them. You get the blueprints, and here, you figure it out. That's how it was.
Yeah.
But, all of our plans come with step-by-step instructions. They're very detailed. And so, Ken had to learn how to put together plans for a guy building a boat. And actually, Ken had never really built a boat. So my dad had the experience of having built a lot of boats, and especially throughout the development stages of Glen-L. So he had a lot of experience, and I know Ken learned an awful lot from him. And then at one point, Ken wanted to buy the company. He figured my dad was ready to retire. But my dad has never been ready to retire. So that was not the case. So they parted ways, and Ken basically, he started his own company in competition with us to some degree, but they were still friends. They didn't part angry at each other or anything. It's just that Ken he wanted more, and I get it. But he had a real successful business for quite a few years. He also sold Glen-L plans and other some of our supplies also. And then when he retired, gosh, again, it's probably been 7 or 8 years ago, we bought all the plans that he had from his catalog that he had designed when he was not with us. So that was a nice little boost to our catalog. I think there are close to about 50 designs that we got from him. So that was kind of nice.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier before we started the recording that your dad's 95 now. Does he still come in the office, Gayle?
Well, he came in, this week. I think he came in one day this week. He's been in the hospital a couple of times over the last few months. And prior to that, though, prior to about the end of August, he was coming to work every day until he would come here at 8:15, and he would leave at he'd usually go to lunch at noon. He'd come back, and he'd usually go home about 2 o'clock, 2 or 2:30. So yeah, he was here every day. He's been, writing articles. He's designed a couple of boats.
Really?
He's really an amazing person. He's just ongoing. Keeping his mind active and like I said, I mean he's got to have care at home. He's at home still, but he lives by himself, and he needs someone to help him. So we've got care set up for him. So they drove him over here, and he spent maybe about an hour because then they realized he had an appointment. So he had to leave early. But and prior to that, I mean, back like I said before the end of August. In addition to coming here every day, he was also going for the weekends. He would leave on Thursday and go drive down to Temecula, which is about an hour and a half drive, and he would spend the weekend at his property that he has about 15 acres in the Temecula Valley that he used to work. He built a pond. It's about a 3/4 acre pond that he has stocked with bass and bluegill. And he's, over the years, he's landscaped it, and it's just a really, really beautiful place. And so he would go down there and basically do a lot of maintenance, maintaining the lawns and things like that, and the water sources. And it's got a couple of streams on it. Never built a house. Kind of lived in a little trailer, but he's always been a worker. whether he's working at the office or even on the weekends when we had our cabin when I was a kid, or when he had the pond in Temecula later on. It was, he likes to work. He likes to be active.
Wow, an industrious guy. That's cool. That's very cool. What was his last design that he's done? Do you know, Gayle?
Well, probably one of the last ones. Gosh, that's a good question. What would be one of his? Might be one of the last ones. Might have been the Glass Bottom Monte. I think it might have been the Monte Carlo. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure again.
Okay.
I can't think off of my head. So I don't know.
Okay. Well, with 300 plans out there, that's a lot to remember, Gayle.
Yeah. A lot of neat designs.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, what do you think 2 or 3 of the most popular designs of all time are for the company?
Well, first of all would be the Squirt. That's a 10-foot runabout. It's a little... well, it's a squirt of a boat, but it's just the funnest little boat, and a lot of people build that as a first-time project. It's a little outboard. It takes, I think, up to 10 horse. So, but it's fast and it's fun and it's not a difficult build, and it's a little runabout that you can make it looks like a vintage little Chris Craft, the way a lot of people do it. They'll put the deck on it that looks like it's planked and finish it out with a mahogany, clear finish on the sides, and it just looks really pretty. So that's our all-time most popular boat. Yeah. Then there would also be the Zip, which I mentioned earlier. That's an outboard as well, and another runabout. And then let's see, I would say, well, for a long time, our airboat was one of our most popular boats. Believe it or not.
Airboat?
Yeah, it's an airboat. Just what it says.
Yeah.
But that hasn't been so popular the last few years, so I'm not sure why. But then as a whole would be our mahogany runabouts, and probably the Riviera and Monaco would be our most popular in that line. Those are outboard or inboards, and both of those are built with the cold molded construction method. And let's see, on the Riviera, I think, is 20 foot. Let's see. Yeah, it's 20 foot, and the Monaco's 19. So they're kind of similar designs, but those are 2 of our most popular. And and then as far as sailboats, because we do have a lot of sailboats too, probably the 8-ball would have been our most popular. Probably for all time. That's just a little 8-foot pram, and I would say for all time, but because it used to be way back that was one of our most popular designs. It's a good starter project if you want to do a sailboat. But probably the Glen-L 14 or 15. Those are both sloops, nice little sailboats, but they have a little more room. And I think these days people kind of think a little more in terms of, how many people can I fit in to my boat. It's more of a social thing. It's not so much that I just want to build a little boat to just so I can build one, but rather, taking people around is a little more of an emphasis too. So
yeah.
That would probably be it.
Wow. So you mentioned you've got about 300 different boat designs. Is that right, Gayle?
Yes.
And up to 55 feet. Now, when you said 55 feet, you really got my attention. What is that boat?
Well, the 55-foot boat would be our Lodestar, and that is a sailboat, and that's a steel boat, and that's the biggest we have.
Wow.
It's a cruising sailboat.
So are there some of those out there, I'm assuming then, if you sell plans for them, somebody's building them? Yep,
there are. Let's see, is it the Lodestar or the Star Pass? We've got a gallery of all of our, on our website.
Mm-hmm.
our various designs, and I believe it's the Lodestar that we have a guy who's put extensive photos in there of that boat.
Interesting. Wow, that's a really big boat.
It's that talk about a project.
Yeah, really.
That's not a one-man project.
Yeah. So, Gayle, in terms of what you guys offer today, is it all plans that you sell, basically, and then you sell kits for fastening and epoxy and that sort of thing, or how does that work?
Yes, that's what we do. We have for each boat we have the plans and patterns, and then if it's a plywood boat, we will have a fastening kit and then a fiberglass covering kit. And in addition, we also have boat trailer plans. So if you have welding skills, you can build your own boat trailer. We also have we have our own epoxy. We also sell System 3 epoxy, and then we have other various fastenings. We have fiberglass cloth and tape and all kinds of stuff. We have steering in our site, and also, as I mentioned earlier, we have inboard hardware also. Pretty much all the running gear you'd need for your inboard, the props and the shafts and shaft logs and prop struts and all of that we carry.
Wow.
And we pretty much have a listing, like for all the inboard boats, we'll have a listing of the different parts that you need. Some of them will vary depending on the motor used, but yes, we have all of that, and lots of books and DVDs that my dad has written and produced throughout the years. And then, I didn't tell you this either. Back in the, I think it's 70s, we started an RV line. So we also have plans for recreational vehicles.
You're kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. I know, it's crazy. We have campers and fifth wheels and trailers, and we have a pop-up, one of those, it's called Trailer Camp, one of those kind of camping trailers. So we had those at one time, like I said, in the 70s, we had, the aluminum skin kits for them, and we sold window kits and door kits and even some of the appliances. And literally when the gas crunch hit in like the 80s, the business just, boom, just kind of stopped. And so we kept up with the kits for a while, but then eventually, we'd sell a kit here or there, and so it just, we just couldn't keep that up, and so we basically pared it down to just plans and patterns, and we still sell a fair amount of plans and patterns for RVs, so believe it or not.
Wow. So are people building them out of aluminum or what?
Well, they build the frames, the actual structure is built out of wood.
Oh, really?
And then you put the siding on. Back in the old days, it used to be, that rippled aluminum siding that you put on.
Yeah.
But now it's other materials that it's kind of a fiberglass material that they put on. It's a smooth surface. Makes it look nicer and makes it look a little more modern.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That is awesome. I didn't know anybody was selling something like that. That is really cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So Gayle, I'm curious on the wooden boats that you have plans for. What are some of them stitch and glue? Some of them bat and seam? What building methods are used? Cold molded, I know you mentioned.
Yeah, we have a number of stitch and glue designs. Those are the largest one we have for stitch and glue is 20 foot. So most of them are smaller, but stitch and glue, just plywood on frames, cold molded. We have a couple of strip planked boats. We have a really cool canoe called the Stripper that is a pretty strip plank. But then we also have some boats we have a 22-foot sailboat, the Amigo, it's a round bilge hull, and so that's built out of either fiberglass or strip planks. No bat and seam. We don't have any. That's old method, and we don't use that anymore.
Yeah.
And then as far as wood, I think I'm trying to think if we have any other wood methods. That's pretty much it.
Wow.
And then there's the fiberglass, which can be, it's a one-off construction method that we actually have a book for. Not as many people are building fiberglass boats, though, anymore. You can buy those pretty cheap,
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed at the variety of stuff that you guys have, and size and design and construction method, and I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot. We have a lot. We definitely do.
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much covered the whole gamut here.
Yeah.
Strip plank boats and everything. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Gayle, can you give me kind of a rough price range for your just buying a set of plans? Where they kind of start and how high they go, or?
Oh, golly. Our plans probably start at about $50 and go up to $800.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, let's say, if you want to build like one of our mahogany runabouts, a couple $100, maybe somewhere between $200 and $300 for a set of plans and full-size patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty inexpensive considering you're going to build a boat that's worth $50,000.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, including full-size patterns, so you don't have to do any lofting.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Everything's still lofted. Yeah.
I'm curious, those patterns, are they cut by computers?
No, we don't cut them. What you get, Dan, is, it used to be we used to blueprint them.
Oh, okay.
This year we invested in a large format plotter and printer.
Oh, okay.
And so they're all printed. Some of them are 42 inches wide, and they might be, the patterns would be like maybe 10, 15 feet long. So they're good-sized sheets of paper. And the way you use the patterns is that you don't cut them out, because once you cut them out, they have a tendency to distort somewhat. So we recommend that you just lay them on the wood, and we have a tracing paper that you can use, or just carbon paper, or you can just punch little dots in it, somehow mark the patterns to the wood, and then you just cut it out from there and put your pieces together.
I see. Wow.
Yeah, and a lot of people ask if we have our plans available digitally. And obviously, since, as I mentioned, they're all hand-drawn, we do not have CAD files of any of our designs. But in addition to that, the way that our boats are built, there's, if you wanted to have them digital so that you could, load them into a CNC machine, all the frames, like I mentioned earlier, are in pieces, and they're all built using hardwood. So it really isn't practical to CNC cut the wood boats. Now, we have a lot of aluminum designs, and I know that might be somewhat better, but even our aluminum boats, the frames are still, they're not made out of sheet material. They're made out of, various other components like bar and things like that. So it's not something you can just cut out on a machine. And we've never provided the planking pattern. So once you get your frames up on the building form, that's your pattern for the wood or the metal. Either way, you just kind of lean it up and you scribe it scribe it to shape, and then you rough cut it. So it's a good system of building a boat. It's definitely geared towards the person who's never built a boat before. That was what my dad's whole intention was in starting Glen-L Marine, was just that a guy or gal could get a set of plans, and they could actually build their own boat with just what we provided them. And it's not to say that it's not challenging, because it certainly is. But I'll tell you what, I hear back from people who, all the time, every week I hear back numerous emails from people saying, this is the most rewarding project of my life. It was challenging, but I tell you, it just was the best thing I've ever done. I hear that so many times. It's amazing. Because it's a challenge, and when you do it, you've accomplished something, And here now you've got a boat, you take it out, and people are watching you on the water and amazed to hear that you built it yourself, and there's just such a sense of pride. And then it's something you can pass down. When you're gone, your kids can enjoy your boat and create their own memories. So definitely a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
so, anyway.
I would totally agree. That's been my experience. Totally. I love it. It's very cool. So, Gayle, for people listening that want to get more information about your designs and stuff, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can go to our website. It's Glen, that's Glen -L.com. And that's, from that page, there's a section called Online Catalogs at the top. And if you go there, that'll show you all our various catalogs. There's one that says 300 boats you can build, and that would be our actual online catalog. Every one of our designs is described in detail online. We have thousands of pictures on our website. We also, if you kind of want to get some more information, like I mentioned, we do have books and DVDs if you want to order those in advance. We also have just a lot of information on our site that you can learn for free. And then we have, I think I mentioned our forum, which is our boat builder forum, and it is a tremendous resource for people building our boats. They help each other. The guys and gals on there are just amazing. They really take a lot of time to answer questions and to give people the support and encouragement that they need while building their boats. So, and like I mentioned, I think to you offline, they do organize get-togethers throughout the year where people get together who have built our boats and talk about them and play with them and just have a really good time. So
very cool. And then you had mentioned a couple, the Squirt and the 8-Ball are good boats for a first-time builder. Any other boats that you'd recommend in that category?
Well, the Zip. Yeah,
Zip.
That's another. Yeah. The thing is, there's a couple different thoughts in terms of what do you build first. Do you build something just to get your feet wet, or do you just build what you want? And I don't know. My opinion is I would just build what I want, because you may not build another one. I don't know. So
that's true.
but then we have so many people that build one and they really get addicted to just the building part, and they prefer that. So you never know. But I always tell people, just build what you want. And pick out the design that you like that really gets your motor going, so to speak, and that'll give you the encouragement to finish it.
Very good, very good. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Gayle. This has been a lot of fun. I didn't mention before now, but I think you're aware that, I know you're aware that your dad was given a special recognition by the Northwest Maritime Center. And I can't remember the exact name of the award. Do you remember what that was called, Gayle? The Lifetime Achievement Award or something like that?
Yes, Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah, and I was at the presentation in Port Townsend in September this year, and that was really cool. And so, anyway, you guys are doing a great thing there. It's been awesome talking to you. And any comments or anything you'd like to add here at the end?
Boy, I think I've just about talked your ear off. But if you're thinking about the possibility of building a boat, give us a call. Go to our website, and if you have any questions, you can email us. My email is Gayle, Gayle, at Glen, Glen-L.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. So that's it.
Okay, well, very good. Thanks for your time, Gayle, and we'll chat here for a second after we stop the interview. So thanks again.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you,
take care. All right, bye. Thanks for doing the interview, Gayle. It was really fun chatting with you and finding out more about your business and about your dad and his brother who started the business 50-some years ago. It's a pretty cool story. I love small business stories in America, and it sounds like you're having a lot of fun with it. So the best of luck to you and everybody there at Glen-L Marine. And next time I'm down in Long Beach to see my buddy, I'm going to swing by and see you in Bellflower. That'll be a lot of fun. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. If you search for Wooden Boat Dan there, you will find me. You can also email me, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. I'd love to hear your wooden boat story. I'd like to see pictures of what you're building. If you have questions about what to build or how to build something, I may be able to help you or direct you to somebody that can. So feel free to email. And, as always, have fun with your wooden boats. It's a great game to be in. If you're not in it, you better get in soon because the doors are closing. No. It's a lot of fun, though. I really enjoy it in my spare time. going out to the shop and working on the boats and then taking them out. It's a very gratifying experience. So that's it for this episode, folks. Thanks for joining me. I hope you come back again next week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless. Take care. We'll talk again next week.